Hello and welcome to I Want to Fight Araki, a JoJo Close Analysis podcast. I'm your host, Thomas,
And I am M. I
and
exist.
today we will be covering episodes 4, 5, and 6 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Part 1, Phantom Blood. Um, but, so we're going to give you guys a quick summary recap of the episodes, and then we're going to get into breaking down the episodes.
I'm
So,
vibing that this is probably going to be the shortest episode in this entire podcast.
it probably will be. We'll see how far we go. But all right. 3 days after the encounter with Dio, Speedwagon takes JoJo to the local hospital. As Speedwagon begins to reflect on the journey thus far, JoJo begins to recover with the help of Arena, who has now found work in the hospital. Meanwhile, Dio is recovering by feeding on the citizens of London and turning them into zombies, including Jack the Ripper. Once JoJo is recovered enough, he and Arena investigate the remains of the Joestar mansion, and with no sign of the mask or Dio. As they take a walk afterwards, a stranger named William A. Zappelli introduces himself to JoJo by jabbing JoJo in the stomach. However, rather than wounding JoJo, it heals him. Zappelli informs JoJo of two things, that Dio is alive and that Dio has the mask. Zappelli also informs JoJo that he is the master of a martial arts style called Sendo, one that uses the power of Haman, energy that mimics sunlight, and one that can be generated by rhythmic breathing. Sensing JoJo's innate talent with Haman, Zappelli decides to take him on as an apprentice. During JoJo's week of training, Zappelli explains his backstory to JoJo. He was part of his father's archaeological company, and they were investigating some mysterious Aztec ruins when they found the stone mask. On the way back to their home country of Italy, a crew member put on the mask and was transformed into a vampire. The crew member massacred his shipmates, and Zappelli jumped overboard to escape. But as the sun rose, Zappelli discovered that the vampire was actually his own father, who turned to dust in the sunlight. From that day forth, he vowed to destroy the mask and any vampires that came from it. Speedwagon interrupts training to inform JoJo and Zappelli that he has found the location of Dio. The trio approach Dio's base of operation in Wind Knight's lot, but are attacked by a zombified Jack the Ripper. Zappelli informs JoJo that he must keep a glass of wine stable without dropping a single drop while simultaneously fighting Jack the Ripper. JoJo succeeds, and the group moves out of the tunnel where they engage Jack. While taking a rest, the group is robbed by a small child. However, JoJo and Zappelli catch up to the thief. They realize the boy was hypnotized by Dio to lure the group into a graveyard so they could be attacked by zombies. Zappelli goes in for the kill against Dio when Dio reveals another one of his powers, the ability to cool down and freeze his blood as well as others. With no blood movement, no Haman can be generated. Right before Zappelli is killed, however, JoJo jumps in and saves him. Dio decides to leave the killing to two resurrected knights, Bruford and Tarkus. Bruford and Tarkus were two servants of Mary, Queen of Scots. With Mary losing the battle against her cousin Elizabeth I, Elizabeth offered a choice. If Bruford and Tarkus surrendered Mary's army and themselves, Mary would be released. However, on the day of their execution, they discovered Elizabeth had actually had Mary killed, and their hate grew as they lay dead. In the present, Bruford decides to face JoJo alone, sensing the spirit of a powerful warrior. While Bruford seems to have the upper hand with his ability to control his hair, JoJo is able to win the fight by conducting Haman through water and Bruford's sword. The Haman temporarily brings Bruford's soul back, and just before he dies, he gives JoJo his sword, emblazoned with the word luck, before adding his own blood to the writing so that it reads pluck, a reminder of JoJo's tenacity. Tarkus calls Bruford a fool and attacks the group, dislodging the piece of ground that they stood on. They, however, are able to glide to safety by using Haman to form dead leaves into a glider. With a small moment to rest, Zappelli remembers the words of his master, Ton Petty, that one day Zappelli will die using Haman to fight evil. Tarkus pursues the group to an old fortress used to train knights and manages to trap JoJo in a trap in which both are attached to a chain in the ceiling, where each one holds the key to the other's collar. Zappelli and Speedwagon are trapped behind a steel door, unable to help JoJo. The small opening in the wall allows the boy from earlier, Poco, to activate a lever and free JoJo, fulfilling Poco's promise to his sister to be more brave. As Tarkus attacks JoJo, Zappelli steps forward, prepared to kill Tarkus and free JoJo. End of episodes. So that
fun
summary was a lot
episodes.
longer than I was expecting it to be when I was writing it.
Yeah, a lot happened, but like I remember while I was watching it, and again, just like I was like, this is the third time I've had to watch this, and it just got like so annoying because
It's
it's
like,
like it's
man, I
such a
just really want to get to battle tendency.
yeah, it's just it's like after hearing you go through the summary again, I'm like, wow, the plot is actually wild. Like, what is happening? It doesn't.
I
It's like
know.
it's so stupid, but then like
I was like, I sound like an insane person. It's like, yeah, like the story starts with like, normal. Well, I guess it's not normal, but a fairly tired. He wants to get all the money, and then zombie Jack the Ripper, and also vampire knights who can suck blood through hair.
yo,
um,
you ever seen The Favorite?
yes, I have.
The first three episodes are just The Favorite, except The Favorite is a lot more fucked up.
Yeah, it really is.
That's just
Man,
literally just it.
is Phantom Blood gonna end with like a bunch of like bunnies just covering the screen?
I remember when we first saw The Favorite at like, the bright lights
Right.
like free movie thing, and we all just once it ended, we all just stared at each other. We didn't say
What the fuck
anything.
was
We were just
that?
like, what?
um,
Okay.
yeah, so is there something you want to jump into first?
Okay, so my notes are sort of in order for what things that go. I only have one page instead of 3 pages, so you can tell there's like a lot less content here. Um, so the first thing I wrote down was continuing my doctoral thesis that Arena is the most badass character in JoJo. She was tending to Jonathan's wounds like 24/7 to the point where her fingers were cracked and dry from being wet because she had the
Yeah,
coolest burns. And I was like, fam, she just keeps getting more and more cool. Like, Arena deserves more screen time.
and Speedwagon is also cool because he's like, what does he say? He says something like, like I wouldn't be as good bedside man or something like that.
Yeah, he's just like,
Um,
well, she could do it better than I could.
um,
Speedwagon in the dub pleases me. I
yeah,
feel
he's
like
pretty funny in the dub.
the sub, it's just like both of them are kind of like annoying to watch like for 3 times over, but just the dub makes it slightly more bearable only because of Speedwagon's English voice, who is just like so violently British to the point where it's just hilarious.
Really is, and I don't think the actor is British, but I
Oh
mean,
no,
he's trying, man.
there's
He's
no
he's
way. He's
going
trying
for
his
it.
best. They just made him like just so much Cockney, way too much. It's just like that meme where it's like God making a person. It's just like I'll add just a little bit of Cockney. Whoops, fills the entire thing.
Yeah. So, well, it's a good point that you brought up that arena thing because I think one of the themes that is present in larger JoJo, especially in Golden Wind, when we get to that 5 years from now, is um
It'll happen.
resolve and like dedication and things like that. Um,
They say resolve like 500 times within part 5.
yeah, they really do.
They say it at least 10 times per episode.
But I do think it is applicable to this situation that so we've got Arena, obviously. I mean, that's a small one, but her resolve to keep um JoJo on the mend, even with her cracked hands and like, just getting all messed up and gnarly. Um, Zappelli is like still willing to fight the mask and fight vampires, even though he knows he's going to die because of this at some point. Um,
Major props to my boy Zappelli
Shout outs to William A. Zappelli.
for being awesome.
Um, we have Speedwagon's dedication to JoJo that he is basically like Speedwagon is willing to like die for a person he doesn't really know all that well.
He's just
Um,
vibing.
he knows like he's a good guy, but like that's really all he knows. Um,
He's like a puppy. He's just
he really is. He's
someone
a
finds him, adopts him, and now he's just like, I would die for you.
he's a puppy with Odd Jobs hat from
Yes.
James Bond. Um, we
He's a
have
puppy with that hat and also a violently British accent.
a puppy that says "Govna."
I love
Um,
Speedwagon in the dub. I cannot get over it. It's just it makes me smile.
it is pretty great. And then we also have like Dio's dedication to power, and I kind of want to transition. So we've got like this theme of resolve, and I was sort of wondering how that ties into this greater theme of power and control because I think, I mean, Zappelli says when he first fights Dio, like, oh, like he's gotten used to his powers like way quicker than any other vampire has. I've never seen this ice blood freezing bullshit. Um, like all that stuff. So I'm kind of wondering like how this theme of resolve and dedication ties into power, especially in regards to um, JoJo, because I feel like JoJo is also dedicated in that he wants to stop Dio, he wants to kill Dio, but it seems like it's what the show is saying is like Dio's drive and his like desire to become powerful is more powerful than Jonathan's desire to kill Dio. Therefore, we're going to reward Dio's resolve. We're going to make him like the most badass, powerful vampire that has ever lived.
An interesting point you have brought up. It sort of ties into what I mostly took notes on was like their use of the word hatred throughout the 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed they used it a lot in like very interesting scenarios. The first note I have here about Dio though was actually how hilarious he looked being like rolled around in this throne by this like apothecary. He's just like
Like the
vibing.
apothecary like can't even like see above the wheelchair. He's
Yeah, it's
like
it's like a throne, and it's just like, sir, what are you doing? This is very extra of you. And and then all jokes aside, the I noticed they used a lot about hatred. Some of it was really kind of cheesy, and the rest of it was like, this could be something that they could have something going here. Like the first time I noticed they used it was at like when Dio was standing at the top of like that cliff, and then like someone was going after him, like, yeah, I'm gonna take you down. I forgot who it was. And then he just like got blown back, and he was like, yo, he just blew me back with a blast of pure hatred.
oh yeah, yeah,
I
I
was like,
forgot about
sir,
that.
sir, I know you're trying to make a point, but like, could you have made it a little bit less cheesy, perhaps? And that I feel like they actually in the fight with Bruford, they kind of did it in an interesting way with how because he was dead and because he died like with so much hatred and just like a desire for revenge, just the urge to kill
Mm-hmm.
like the people that had wronged him, that it sort of like brewed in the grave. And then sort of like what Dio did was sort of like, I guess, take advantage of that by bringing them back and be like, hey, why don't you use this, that you like all this crazy anger you have brewed up, and use it to just kill this person who has never done anything bad to anyone before. And
Definitely.
it was sort of interesting because the way they went about it, especially with Bruford, Tarkus was just like, in the end, he was like, nah, I still hate you. But Bruford towards the end was just like, actually, like, well, I got all my anger out, and now I don't want to really fight anymore. So,
Take
how
my
about since
sword.
you defeated me, I'll just give you my sword and call it a day. And
I'm a head out fam, and then he just like turns to
And I'm
dust.
like, I feel like this is like the entirety of Phantom Blood, is that they touch on something that could be very, this is why it makes me angry and why I want to fight Araki. Oh boy, roll credits. Why I want to beat the hell out of somebody, or whoever was at David Productions making any decisions, or if it was Araki, I don't care who it was, I want to fight you.
I want to fight someone like Tarkus and Bruford.
They touch on something that could be so interesting. That was most of my rant with Dio in the last episode. Like, he could have been interesting,
Yeah.
but in this one, it was just I don't have a like I have a lot to say, but I can't formulate it properly because, well, they just sort of didn't deliver on a lot of the points. So I can't really elaborate if they didn't elaborate. I could say how I would do it, but that would just too much. Too much. I
Now I'm
don't
going
want
into the
to.
singularity.
I'm going. I'm collapsing into a singularity. I'm just. I don't want to throw too much shade on my king, Araki.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Going off that point, because I definitely think this Bruford Tarkus JoJo dynamic is probably the most interesting part of these 3 episodes.
And they're also like the two most forgettable characters in the entire series. But like in these 3 episodes, it's.
I don't think we're at the 2 most forgettable characters
Who would you
yet.
suggest they are?
I would say in the next 3 episodes, Ton Petty and
Oh yeah, that's
Dyer.
fair. That's definitely
Um,
fair. At least Dyer has like a meme attached to him though. You
that's
fell
true.
for it, fool. Thundercross split attack.
But yeah, I what I kind of wanted to say about this whole Tarkus Bruford JoJo thing is so we talked a lot about in the last episode this sort of trope with Speedwagon that gets expanded on in later JoJo parts, where sort of a villainous character becomes a major supporting character, and they're kind of doing that with Bruford and Tarkus, where Bruford, being more of an honorable knight, he wants to fight JoJo one on one. He sort of acknowledges when he loses. Um, that's when he gets sort of redemption in a way where he finally gets to he gets his soul back for a second. He gives Jojo his sword. Um, there's that. Whereas Tarkus is has fully given up his honor. He is. I mean, they say that they serve Dio, but really, Tarkus definitely seems more personally interested in just getting a good fight out of.
He
Um,
just wants to punch somebody, like I often do
he
when
wants to
recording
punch
this
someone, and he
podcast.
wants to stab or slash someone with the sword that is exactly his size, with height, they are the same.
It's not to mention he's like 10 feet tall.
Yeah,
Why is he so large?
large boy.
He's just a large boy.
But so Tarkus was just giving up all of that is just pure evil. I mean, he is not really, which I think is kind of interesting. They say that Haman is what's responsible for bringing Bruford back, but I guess it's sort of they're saying there's a hard line stance where um people like Tarkus and people like Dio are so far into their own evil, they cannot be saved compared to Speedwagon and Bruford, who have just enough of a sense of honor, have just enough of some inherent goodness that they can be turned away from evil. So they're sort of saying that there's this middle line exists, but only sometimes.
I vibe with this because I remember I was going on a big rant before, well, not in the podcast, but just in general, where I was trying to write a character for this big story I'm trying to write because the two of us we kind of amateur writers,
Hey, we write.
hey, we do that. And I was like, okay, I have this one character and he's not a good person.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call him a good person. And I'm still thinking about it. Do I redeem this guy or not? So I made this very, very extensive chart on all the moral and theme implications on how or if I would redeem him or if it would be a partial redemption or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I made this giant chart and it's just
It's like in movies, when they bring out the scroll and the bottom just keeps going and going for
that was me. It's I wrote it on one page and I had to continue it onto another page and I'll probably have to make another page and I'll probably have to keep writing about, okay, how should I deal with this? And it's just oh, It's so weird.
Um, yeah, it's like difficult to like take a hard line stance on like something as complicated as like morality. Like I mean, I don't want to get too far away from the topic at hand, which is JoJo, but I mean
The
like
topic at hand.
uh you think about like I always kind of think about like what is like can a person who does something like really bad like be redeemed, like a war crime or something like
War
that.
Crimes, Full Metal Alchemist. Sympathetic
maybe
War Crimes, the anime.
maybe
War
if we
Criminals.
finish
No,
JoJo, we could do a Full Metal Alchemist podcast as well,
Dio
like
is a
this.
war criminal.
Just talk about war crimes all day.
That's
Um,
what it would be. It would just be like us reading off the Geneva Convention, just like going through each character and picking out which violations of the Geneva Convention that all of them have done. And I bet most of them have done at least one, possibly five or more.
that's beautiful.
Especially a certain few. Cough, cough, envy, cough. Cough,
Even
cough,
their
Kimberly.
mom. Anyway,
We're not going to make this a Full Metal Alchemist podcast.
no, at least not now.
I'm going to compare Dio to Alex from Clockwork Orange again
Okay,
and just say that every time that like I write more notes on this or watch more of part one, he reminds me even more and more of him because of just like it's hard to explain because I didn't write thorough enough notes. It's just like the fact that the two of them are both just like literally described and said to be pure evil and also
right.
have a tendency to lie about it like really well and just be like, oh, I'm fine. I'm not a bad person, Just like how he tricked George into thinking that he was not terrible for a very long time.
So in this analogy, George is the guy in the robe who like knocks him out at the end, like puts him in a face of spaghetti.
I always think of like that scene in the movie in the very beginning because one, it has the it's like that scene where like Jojo confronts Dio in like we're going back to the first episode. I don't care. When that scene,
I
they'll
think it's
say it
okay to go
actually.
back to earlier
It's
episodes.
fine. Okay. That one part where just Jojo confronts Dio and he's just like, "Hey, this medicine, bruh, perhaps it's poison?" And he was like, "What are you talking about? Why would I do that?" And it's like that. It reminds me of a scene in the movie where like Alex was just like mostly naked. This is funny. He's just like only wearing underwear. It has a very similar vibe. It's like the same scene as the Jojo and Dio one, but it has a more similar vibe to when Bruno licks Giorno's face because because it's so awkward and he's just like goes up to him. It's just like, you perhaps aren't like raping and murdering people in the night, are you? And he was like, no, I'm not. Why would I do that? You know me to be a good kid. And then he like sits down with him and he's like, keep in mind, he's like barely wearing any clothes at all. And they literally just lay down and he was like, well, if you were doing these terrible things, blah, blah, blah. And then he just like lifts his fist up and punches him in the dick. It reminds me, it's like,
How
it
many times
reminds me of that, but it has more of an energy of when Bruno licks Giorno's face.
how
It's the
many
taste
times
of a liar.
have you seen Clockwork Orange?
I have only seen it twice.
Oh, okay. Because like you know so much specifics about it.
No, it's such a memorable movie because it's just so wild.
It's true.
Because of those really wacky scenes.
So
Try the wine.
we can't call this episode that. We called the last episode that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of JoJo and Dio and their whole confrontations, the other point I kind of wanted to talk about was like Destiny, and I feel like Destiny is, in addition to like
Oh, part 5, they go into that hard.
part 5, definitely part 3, I would say is the most explicit about this overarching theme of Destiny.
It's a
But
wild concept to deal with.
it really is, and it's sort of surprising to me how JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in general thinks about destiny, because like in this series, like if you are destined to do something, like you're doing it. Like you can't change
And
that.
everyone just accepts it for some reason.
Yeah, which I mean, it's almost like
They're often not given a choice. Like with in part 3, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna kill your mom.
right.
It's like, okay, I guess I have to do
Um,
something about this.
or just the fact that all the stands have a connection to fortune telling in terms of their naming and um, sort
Abdel
of
being a
that
straight up fortune teller.
that Dio has the world, which is the most powerful stand in up until that point. But yeah, so I it's just very different than because like I play a lot of like JRPGs and stuff like that, and I feel like Destiny in those types of games and those types of stories is always kind of an opponent. Like the heroes always want to change destiny, and they always want to like fight against the inevitability and things like that. And JoJo isn't really like that. I mean, and I think
Just
it's
accept it and move on.
they accept it and move on. And I think like something that you pointed out to me in the first 3 episodes that we reviewed was that whole line about how their like JoJo and Dio's fight is like one that will like change the course of history or whatever they say. Um, so almost the show is treating this encounter with JoJo and Dio and like future encounters probably up till Jotaro in part 3 as like a predestined, like this is an epic. What we're watching is like a it's like Gilgamesh, it's like the Odyssey, it's like this canonical historical battle. And like that commands like a certain level of um respect, I guess. Um but then it also undermines it with Zappelli in the Japanese version going, "Hey baby" in English.
It's
So
a
they're
very
like
cursed thing.
they're at once taking this seriously and at another time sort of playing with it, deconstructing it, things like that.
I
Um,
feel like sort of going off of that, I could like use this to go into this giant theory I have on the appeal of JoJo, but I'm gonna save that for a later date. I might touch on it. Back with like Destiny, for some reason I just thought of some other things. And it's like something that doesn't really appear until I guess a little bit later is like the very tiniest smidge of a theme of the younger generations having, sort of being burdened
mhm,
by the mistakes of the older ones, which could also tie into your like the whole toxic masculinity theory you had.
definitely.
because
We're
it's
definitely
like
gonna I'm gonna go
because it's
full
like
on with that once we
oh
get to
yes,
Diamond is Unbreakable.
because it's like the first 3 are sort of like they screwed up in some way, and
hmm
the last 3 are just sort of like trying their best to get through it. So this also ties into like the Destiny thing, and also like straight up, I don't know why I thought of, well, I do know why I thought of the Netflix show The Dragon Prince, because that's like the main theme of the show is the younger generations fixing the mistakes of the older ones, like things that could have easily been avoided due to like society TM, and and also just having good common sense. They couldn't, like, a lot of the stuff could have easily been avoided, or like maybe not in JoJo, some of it could have been avoided, but it's just like it just wasn't. And then like Josuke in part 4 is literally just trying to vibe and he gets wrapped up in all this. And then in part 5, just Giorno's just existing, although he
Giorno
does
just
have a
gets
goal in mind. He's not like, actually, now that I think about it, I don't want to rant about part 5 right now, but I think I might have to with Giorno sort of, actually, I think Giorno sort of refuses to get wrapped up into the whole Joestar family drama
He
because he's just
does.
sort of, he's like, I'm gonna do my own thing, because he like, Jotaro and Koichi are in it for like a hot sec, and then they're just gone, and then he's just like, no, I have this other thing, I don't care if I don't know my dad, I don't care about the family drama, I'm just trying to say, like, solve the problem that is the mafia.
Right. I mean, and I don't want to make this a part 5 discussion, but he does kind of get wrapped up in it though with the stand arrow.
Yeah, that actually, yeah, I forgot. I completely forgot about that plot point for a hot sec.
But you are right, and it is
He's like
important
less
to
wrapped up in it. He never actually meets anybody that he's related to. He meets
right.
people that know who he's related to, but he's not like in the drama TM. It's like
And you're
once
right.
again,
But I
a young Joestar has to like solve the problems that they caused in the past.
mhm. I do think that it does tie back into this idea of destiny that like even though some characters that we're going to meet as this podcast continues sort of reject or are just indifferent to the Joestar legacy, they still have to deal with the consequences of it.
Yeah, Jotaro straight
Um,
up just doesn't care.
yeah.
It's just like Dio's like, I'm gonna kill your mom, and he's like, I guess I have to.
And so I had a really good point about destiny in this series, and then I
Did you
lost
lose
it.
it? Oh no.
What? Okay, I'll try and think of it.
Do your
What are
best.
some standout moments in this for you?
Ooh, I have a rant to go on while you think of that. Okay, so Poco, right? He's the most well-written character in Phantom Blood, and let me tell you why. He's the only one with any development, and everybody overlooks him. He's just this random child that like is sort of like hypnotized. How does that work? I don't know. Into like luring them to a specific place, and we're like, okay, sir. And then he just sort of like decides to tag along with him, but then suddenly there's a flashback of his like sister being like, he's getting beat up by some kids, and then his sister once again, who is like this very tough and scary person, I would assume, because like all the bullies, all these dudes run away when she approaches. She's just staring them down like, excuse me, and they all just yeet away. And she's like, why are you so pathetic, child? You got to stand up for yourself. And he's like, I want to. And then she's like, but you haven't yet, have you? And then he's like, okay, I have to. And she's like, you better, or I swear to God.
If you love standing up for yourself so much, why don't you marry it?
And then like after thinking of that, he's like, you know what? I was thinking at first that he didn't have any motivation whatsoever for saving Jonathan, but then he was like, wait a minute, but this guy will probably kill everybody in my town, including my sister. So I guess now is the time to be brave. And he just sort of like literally just like fights through the fear despite Speedwagon yelling at him to stop. And I'm like, wow, that's actually like character development, even though it's small, it's still there, and it's like the only amount that actually happens within Phantom Blood, really, which
Oh,
I can appreciate.
I remember what I was going to say.
Fantastic.
Did you say everything you wanted to about the Poco point?
Pretty much.
So we're talking about destiny. We're talking about some of these problems probably could have been avoided, and the protagonists of parts 4, 5, and 6 sort of have to deal with those consequences. That being said, do you think that the major problem in Phantom Blood could have been avoided?
See, I'm not sure actually. If you got to think about like where it goes all back to, and that could be to Zappelli, I guess it's like, actually, now that I think about it, it could have been avoided, because like it's like you could have just said that they couldn't have gone on that archaeological expedition. But I'm like, sir, it's always good to know history. I am a history enthusiast. And you know what could have happened is that, you could have just not put on the mask. And it's like, I know it's I'm gonna go out on a limb here and on like the smallest limb, like the tiniest limb that will break under my feet, and I
A
will
limb
probably
that will
plummet to
turn
my
into a
doom.
bullet that turns back into a tree limb.
And be like the quest for like the mask and like putting it on and like the curiosity and like I it's almost like this weird thing about greed. I don't know how to like I don't know how else to like spin it. I'm trying to just spin this the best I can. I'm trying so hard here. It's not working very well. But I guess it's just like if you can, I mean, you know what, part one bullshit's enough as it is. I'm allowed to bullshit. So you could almost say that it's like, oh yes, he wants to have all the cool things from the Aztec ruins. Like, sir, why are you putting it on your face? That's not a good idea. Morbid curiosity, and it's almost like, actually, you know what? Never mind. I have a better way to bullshit this.
I just want to interject for a second.
I have a better way to.
Like,
okay,
I
please.
wanna see you watch Aliens and just or Alien or Aliens and just be like, sir, do not put that on your face. With the face huggers and the xenomorphs.
Sir, do not put that on your face.
Do not have that burst out of your chest, sir.
So I have a metaphor. Well, I don't even know if it's a metaphor. It's some sort of literary device.
I'm creative writing major. I'll tell you if you're wrong.
Okay. And I'm a writer, but I don't know any of the terms because I'm tired. Okay.
I want to move on to battle tendency already. We got one more episode.
I just want to talk about Joseph Joestar. God damn it. Anyways, so you could say that it's sort of like some sort of like the theme of greed comes in a little bit with the mask, where it's like, yes, he was curious, he put the thing on. You could almost say that vampirism itself, or becoming one in JoJo, is sort of like a product of greed. It's like you find cool things and you're like, I want these things, and then the things that you get want you to do more things, and then in order to do those things you need to maybe like kill 50 people on a ship to do them. it's just you notice that once this is like, I like to connect things to reality, and I notice that oftentimes it's very easy for people, like a lot of times people say that they cannot be corrupted by greed, and this is like in my own experience with myself and people that I've known, but then once you start to acquire things, you're like, maybe I like this. And it's like, either it's the kind of thing that it's like the reason why it's such a rampant thing in like modern society is because people get things and they just want to continue doing those things, and they get to the point where they can't stop, which is actually like another connecting it back to the thing that I'm writing. I'm writing this big thing. I like to write fantasy. I'm writing a fantasy trilogy. Don't judge me. And a theme that I added into it.
Anything.
I didn't say. I'm not promoting myself.
That's at Emily Winkles on Twitter.
Yes. Please follow me. I'm desperate. Okay. A theme that I like to add into it. It's like, well, another character I wrote, it's like a person, like one of the characters I'm writing is a hitman, right? And he's just like sort of been treated badly his whole life, back to the whole victim of circumstance thing. Whether you are or not one, does it even exist? Speedwagon says no. And I'm starting to agree with Speedwagon. Anyways, I just keep going off on weird silliness.
You're good.
I swear to God. And oh my God, I almost lost my point. It's still there. Don't lose it.
Hitman.
So I'm writing this he's a hitman, and he just sort of like, he's like, well, I can use the pointy sword very good, so I might as well just like have people pay me to kill other people. So he does that, and then once he does that, he sort of can't stop. And I wrote this, one of my favorite chapters I ever wrote in it was when someone was like making a deal with him to like kill somebody, and he was like starting to regret it because the person he wanted, you know, that she wanted him to kill was like young.
Right.
It was like, do I want to kill a child? And then she just straight up says, you know, you've already sort of, I'm just doing stuff that I'm writing. This is valid. This is valid enough. This is as valid as I'm gonna get. And she sort of just
All right.
she sort of just says, well, you've already killed a bunch of people. What's stopping you from doing this? Like, you're already corrupted enough as it is. You can't stop now. What's the point of stopping? It's like that one like meme of like Satan on Twitter. Like, why just like commit one sin and come down here? Just pathetic. Why not commit 1,000,000 and come down here a legend? It's just like, why don't you just keep doing this, because now you can't stop doing it, because no matter what, you can never be redeemed at this point because you've done way too many terrible things.
So
that's sort of my point with like the whole mask thing. It's like, yes, once you start it's I'm waving my hands here.
So what you're saying, I'm gonna try and
please
distill
do
this and tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Please do
So
this. I'm
what
just a
you're
chaotic
saying
mess at all times.
is that the moment that the mask goes on Zeppeli's dad's face, um, destiny and power, all these sort of things that we've been talking about.
It's like crossing that line you were talking about.
Yeah.
It's like crossing the line. It's like once you cross the line, you cannot go back. Like there comes a point when all the terrible things you have done cannot no longer be redeemed. And like, even though it was just like a little bit of curiosity that created it, it was like, which was kind of dumb, but like it could have been a much better like metaphor.
Right.
But you know, it just
See, so I think this is actually interesting because I sort of, I mean, at least in the world of JoJo, I actually feel like destiny in this particular case can't be avoided. I mean, based on what we learn in part 2 about just how many masks there are, I feel like if it wasn't Zeppeli's dad, it would have been someone else. I mean,
we would have not been the Joestars, maybe, or maybe it would have been them. Who knows?
I think it's. I mean, I feel like it's a definite possibility that the mask that Zeppeli's dad found is not the same mask that Dio is using. I mean,
bastard cars. It's all his fault.
So I feel like this is a situation that cannot be avoided, and I mean, Giorno is going to pay a price for it once we get to part 5.
Oh, I just had a thought, but continue.
But I do feel like some way, like, I mean, in the world of this story, Dio is just too evil to not come up with some sort of take over the world plan. And you know, Jonathan has to fight him. He has to kill Dio. And even though that will probably lead to some, I mean, that leads to all the conflicts that we're gonna see as we continue this podcast, but it sort of is inevitable.
I'm about to dip into part 2 a little bit, just the big toe right into part 2. Just dip the big toe into part 2. So I can trace this back better. I'm gonna continue bullshitting it, except the shit is less from a bull. It's like
it's more cow shit.
It's
not bullshit.
More of a cow. It's just less. It makes more sense. If you want to connect this all, but if I want to connect this all back to something stupid, such as the concept of greed itself, and just like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? So the whole
just
reason,
unload, Emily.
whole reason that Cars wanted to like make these masks was because he was a greedy bastard who wanted him and his society to rule over the human race pretty much. And he created these masks, and here we are.
And now
it's corrupting people in the future and making them do bad things and all that whatnot. I don't know any other way to explain it. I'm a chaotic bastard. Please put me down.
I mean,
I need to organize my thoughts better for these. I'm trying.
I think you're doing good. I think I kind of want to save I want to respond to your point, but I also want to kind of save it for once we get to battle tendency. Um, so what I'll say is that Tiger King was a really good documentary on Netflix. No, what I'll
Did
say
you actually
is
watch Tiger King?
I did watch. Yeah, I watched all
How?
of it.
Oh, I
Oh,
haven't. I haven't
uh,
watched any of it.
we can talk later about it, but
We'll do one episode that has nothing to do with JoJo, just one episode about Tiger King.
so what I'll say is that I think Cars and the Pillar Men creating the masks is sort of, again, it kind of ties into this thing about destiny. Like Cars kind of wants to fight destiny in a way, but
And then it just ends up getting all
fails.
just sort of backfires when his people are just like, you why are you doing this? And he's like, screw you, and then he kills all of them, and then just like
And then he gets killed.
and then he proceeds to, well, he doesn't get killed. He just
Right.
sort of,
Oh yeah, yeah. But
he
basically he
never
gets killed.
actually dies because he's sort of like a god by the end of it. But
It's worse than dying.
yeah, I would say what happens to him is worse. I'd
Um
rather die than do that.
yeah. But yeah, something we'll
It all has
definitely
to
talk
do with,
about when we get to battle tendency.
it all tends to like tie back into wanting, like for every villain, like it all like ties back into wanting like ultimate power and dominance over the world is what like screws them and everyone else around them over. And once again, connecting it back to things that happen in reality, I feel like that is generally what fucks us over most of the time in society. Is one person just wants all of the things and wants to rule everything, and then suddenly everyone else is wrapped into it. People get screwed over trying to stop it. You know, people are now forced to stop it. They're forced to stop whatever they were doing in their lives, whether it's Jonathan pursuing archaeology or me trying to write a book. You gotta stop it in order, like, you gotta give up on your dreams in order to, like, get rid of all of this corruption and evil in the world because some bastard decided he just wanted to put on a stone mask and become a vampire and then, like, kill your whole family just as a treat.
So in this analogy, this
In this
podcast
analogy,
is
Dio is Donald
Dio.
Trump.
I'm just gonna not respond.
We're not gonna talk about politics. That's the old. I had to make an analogy in order for that to make sense. I had to like actually connect it to an actual example in order for me to like have basis on this point, and I don't intend on going any farther than that.
I think we did the best we could. So that was a pretty good discussion about honor and destiny and all that. Let's talk about the dumb stuff now.
Fantastic.
Why does Cars' hair have the same power as Yukako's stand when we get to part 4? Is
Not
he a
Cars,
stand?
Bruford.
Oh, Bruford. Did I say Cars?
Yeah, you did.
Well, I mean, Cars does have very lovely hair.
It's very lovely indeed.
Yeah, Bruford has the same power
it.
as Yukako's stand in part 4, which is like.
Except Yukako is a lot more interesting.
Yukako is a lot more interesting.
And a lot scarier.
Yeah, definitely. He can also suck blood through his hair, which.
Oh yeah, that's kind of wild.
I don't know how that works.
That's some weird Avatar, like James Cameron's Avatar bullshit. Like, also, I just want to comment on the probably one of the stupidest attack names I've ever seen in my entire life: Underwater Turquoise Blue Overdrive.
Yeah. I really do like that bit though, where he is like he finds some way to breathe underwater. I thought that was kind of cool.
The fights are just kind of okay in part 1, and they get progressively more fun.
Yeah,
I do want to comment on Haman as like a power system. and that it's actually kind of interesting because it's actually like after watching like part 1 and 2, it's very versatile.
It
Like
really is.
it can do a lot of stuff, but it's not nearly as versatile or as fun or as like interesting when it comes to characters as stands are.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Haman is like it's pretty interesting. I want to give some credit to it because it can be used in a lot of different ways, and especially in part 2, it is used in a lot of very clever ways.
I always think
And
as well that the ways the villains counter Haman users is kind of interesting.
Cars is like, I am God now, you cannot.
Yeah, there's that. There's because like Haman is all about breathing, which I think is kind of an interesting idea for power. I mean, breathing is so
It's like
innate,
firebending.
like we don't even think about breathing, but um,
I think
like
about breathing all the time.
they have to have supreme control over that to use Haman effectively. Um,
You, uncultured, still have not watched Avatar The Last Airbender yet.
I
And they
I
sort
still
of do
not
something like that. Like they literally have this whole thing in the show where it's like, yes, firebending
fire branding.
comes from the breath. And they do this whole thing where it's like, the reason why my boy was not a good firebender was because he didn't know how to breathe properly. And it's like, does Haman is firebending
Does
confirmed?
Haman is fire? Well, I mean, wait till episode 8, Emily, of Phantom Blood.
Does Haman is
Um,
firebending? It's
but
sunbending.
sunbending, kind of, yeah. Um, I I'm trying to think if the bit about them making the dead leaves into a glider.
Oh, that was kind of wild.
It's cool, but the way they explain it is like what? Where it's like, yeah, every human being has innate magnetism, and Haman is going to expand that magnetism so that we can make a
Leaf.
glider out of leaves.
Yes.
Presumably metal leaves that come from trees, and also their hands are made of metal so that they can attach to the glider. Um,
And
but
now they're just metal benders going back to Avatar The Last Airbender. Metal
magnets,
benders.
how do they work?
How do they work?
Actually, why isn't there a stand called Insane Clown Posse?
That would be wild. That would be good. You know,
Uh,
I could easily compare this is gonna reveal my dark past, my dark evil villain past. I can easily compare JoJo to Homestuck. It actually reminds me a lot of Homestuck. It really does, because the plot doesn't make any sense and it's really long and it's so memeable, and it's just the same kind of like stupid BS in it. Not to mention Rohan is in Homestuck, I swear to God, because so the creator of Homestuck, Andrew Hussey, sort of wrote himself into the story as this like cryptid man who just sort of exists. And like, if you read this man's tweets, go on Google and look up Andrew Hussey's Twitter, because everything on his Twitter is something that Rohan would say or do.
I personally I know a little bit about Homestuck, but just I mean this podcast, we're only 2 episodes in on this podcast.
Yeah, this one there's
but it's
not a lot
already
of
cursed.
content in these episodes, so we just had to go off on tangents about other parts and just other stupid shit.
I mean, I feel like we did pretty good up until that Homestuck bit. All right, so
my dark past. Okay.
with Emily's dark past shown in the light, is there any last minute things you want to go over?
Yes, the next episode will be the last episode of us covering Phantom Blood, thank God. So,
Yeah.
Does Dio end up being a good villain? Find out in the next episode of Goku's Bizarre Adventures. Okay. That is all I have to say.
All right.
Spoiler alert, no.
No.
But I really wish he would. I really wish.
So, as far as social medias, you can find me on Twitter at Thomas M. Brickman to see all the silly stuff I post about. I also do another podcast called at Post Game called Post Game Content. You can find
With
information about
another
that
legend,
at Post Game Con. Yeah, with my buddy Kev.
Kevo. Kevo, the man who threw pepperoni and cheese sticks at me from a floor above.
I'll talk to him about that tomorrow. But
Tell him that I appreciate that one time that he threw pepperoni and cheese sticks at me from the floor above and it landed on me. And then I proceeded to eat the cheese and the pepperoni.
If you want to follow news about the show, you can follow the show's social medias at I want to fight Araki on Twitter, at I want to fight AR1.
I don't know why I did that. I did not pick that.
On Twitter, and on Instagram, I believe it's just I want to fight Araki.
Please do. I post memes on there now.
Yeah, Emily does a really good job with those.
Only the most quality JoJo memes. Only the ones that tickle my fancy, just the most.
And Emily, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, I'm on Twitter at Emily Vinkles. That is my name. That is just my name. I post stuff about yelling about character development because that is all I'm good for in this life.
And this JoJo podcast.
And this.
All right. With all that said, we'll see you guys next time on I Want to Fight Araki, where we cover episodes 7, 8, 9 of Phantom Blood, the finale of Phantom Blood.
Finally.
We'll see you guys then.